Hey all, new day, new verse. We continue on into Isaiah. Today we're going to be doing 12 and 13, but we're going to be doing a little bit more than that. We're going to be kind of talking and bouncing around a little bit through it, not just through the chapter, but the whole of possibly Isaiah and really the whole of the Bible. And Father God, just lead the way. Thank you for it. Give the words, give the grace, give the daily bread we need. Have your kingdom come, your will be done. Lord, make us forgiving and loving people. Make us new. Strip off everything that's not of you in us, that we might be laid bare before we are laid bare. Responding to the Erecha call. We are here at your feet, trusting in your hand. Lead the way, Lord. Amen. Verses 12 and 13. Listen to me, O family of Jacob, Israel, my chosen one. I am God, the first and the last. It was my right hand that laid the foundations of the earth, my right hand that spread out the heavens above. When I call out the stars, they all appear in order. I wanted to dig into these verses because, I encourage you guys constantly, read ahead, read behind, dig into it. I mean, Psalm 1 talks about chewing on the word constantly for a reason. And the more I dig into it and the more I have fun with Samuel and Kings, the less interest I have in a lot of the things the world produces because they're just not nearly as interesting. The writing's predictable with most of it. And here, even reading it 1,000 times, there's still something more to learn. Not just about the characters themselves, but something about me. Something about how God is using me, refining me, shaping me. I mean, Paul says it well to Timothy, that it's conviction, correction, edification, building up, the tearing down the things that aren't supposed to be there. It is the only thing I have ever found that will read us more than we read it. And that's why I encourage to pick it up and to dig into it. Is when I see arguments over interpretation, my heart breaks. We're supposed to have unity, not uniformity, but unity. And so when we, instead of hearing each other and going, oh, that's why you see it, oh, that's cool, well, we yell at each other and we cut each other down, and it saddens me. Because these words right here, it was my right hand that laid out the foundations of the, or my hand that laid out the foundations of the earth, my right hand that spread out the heavens above. Well, Genesis says that he spoke it in Genesis 1, and Genesis 2 says it's a little bit different order. So, it must be a contradiction. No, that's an easy cop-out that requires no literary truth. I used to do it all the time for my AP Lit Lang classes. It was the cop-out way. It went, I'm right, they're wrong, and I can justify it with this argument, which is really great for, doing a bare minimum assignment argument, but it's not really any form of intellectual honesty. Because what if it's not a contradiction in any way, shape, or form? What if it's trying to make a point? Not a how, but a who and a why. So that when we get to these verses here, oh, yes, his hand that laid the foundations of the earth as in his work. It all exists because of his hand. Because he's talking to a time and place people who have just watched their northern cousin nations, the other 10 tribes, go as northern Israel's taken out. A good chunk of their land, all the way down to the gates of Jerusalem itself, has been smacked down by the same force. And the only reason that that force has been repelled is because the king has humbled himself, prayed, and the prophets at the time are saying, no, God's going to save us. For now, we're going to get that same treatment here soon if we don't change our minds. Don't change our actions. Don't stop worshiping these false idols. Don't stop passing our children through a fire of sacrifice. Don't stop casting out the least of these and filling a valley with the bodies of the innocent dead. That his right hand, his authority, spread out the heavens above. That the stars themselves, these very things that the other cultures around them, including the one that just marched up on their front gate and smashed it down, effectively, mind you, Jerusalem was not touched, but every city up to it smacked down, rolls all the way up. Everything else but Jerusalem obliterated. And this nation is saying, no, our gods are the king of the stars. It's actually that star that's a form of us, the Pleiades cluster. No, the Perseus, Orion, Pick a star constellation. These are the ones we worship. Zeus, Hercules, Jupiter. Oop, there goes Lucifer, Venus. The lost worship these things. Yet Yahweh says here clearly to understand, not just in the Genesis one of, oh, here they are, day 3, the sky rulers to mirror the earth rulers, which gets really into a lot of the beauty and interesting of 1 and 2 as well. But that it's, oh yeah, they appear by name because my authority is over them. And suddenly they get even more illumination about the centurion to Jesus of, well, no, I'm a man under authority. Like, you're the God of all creation. Say the word and it's done, mate. Like, I know what authority is. If my boss says march at double time, I march at double time or I get the whip. And if my servant, the ones under me, if the thousands of soldiers at my beck and call don't double time it when I say, move your ass, they get the whip. So I understand. You have the authority. Your word goes. You are the top of the top of the top. You are the origin source. Your word goes. Faith like that wasn't found in Israel, but was found in an outsider, a pagan, who knew only that it was better to lift others up than to cut them down. An other who said, hey, this servant may be a servant, but they're still a person and they're hurting and they need help and I can't do it. Silver and gold I do not have. The ability, the capacity for this healing, I do not have. I cannot muster. But there is a name. The name of HaMashiach, Melech, the King, the High Messiah, the God of all creation made flesh. And in his name be healed. In his name be won. In faith in him alone. But give the word, and it will be done. George says hi. These words, they echo into the end of 16. I mean, I love music. I love stories. I love the intricacy of it. I love the forms of a refrain. Because when you're transitioning in music, you've got a refrain or a bridge or something like that that helps you build between one melody to another in a medley. When you're transitioning, even when you're doing it in a singular song, if you've got a scene kind of transition, to use the film imagery of it, if you're going from one kind of setting style of music into another, there's some kind of transition, especially if the two are more connected than the audience might think, but in a way that you want them to actually listen for the subtle tones. And we have that right here at the end of 16. The beginning of 16 is come closer and listen. From the beginning, I have told you plainly what would happen. And then the and now. Like I said, we're going to be jumping around a little bit. But the reason I did, George, leave the pill bottles alone. But the reason I wanted to do that is because it's that same kind of refrain that invites between Genesis 1 and Genesis 2. That understanding that Cyrus is going to be used, yes, but that's not the end of the story. Something beautiful, something more is to come. Because just like Genesis 1 points out who God is as master and creator over salvation, reality, all of it, so too does Genesis 2 point out the need for the seed of the woman to come and crush the head of the snake. To get rid of the core problem that's there. The serpent in us that has the Cain option of going, yep, I could master this, but instead I'm going to brain him. I could forgive the betrayal, but instead I'm going to lash out. I could stand with, but instead I'm going to abuse with the secret that was offered to me in a place of weakness and trust. In a place of going, I believe I can trust you with this. Sharing the load. And instead abusing each other with it. As we go through the other 3 major prophets in the Scroll of the 12, Ezekiel, Jeremiah, Isaiah here, and then the 12 are the names towards the back of the OT middle section with the Tanakh, but I digress. The words that get into the core idea. Something has to change. If human beings could do it all willy-nilly, easy-peasy, why don't we? If it were so easy to follow a law of love and being set apart and living that unique structure and way of doing it, then why did Jerusalem, why did Judah, why did northern Israel, why are they compared to Sodom and Gomorrah? and told that they are actually worse than Sodom and Gomorrah. And why? Because it's the very things they were doing the entire time. The widow didn't matter. No one gave a damn about the orphan. The immigrant was something to be used and abused. And it's sad. Because the law is a beautiful thing. It points out our guilt and the need for help. So we understand, hey, slavery not okay. Now, it had to be pointed out. Even in Torah, it had to be pointed out, no, your brothers can't be enslaved. You're not supposed to do that. And then later down the line in Isaiah's day, Syria, Egypt, Israel, you're all mine, grow the up. Because this entire book, Table of Nations, all on through, it points out one core idea that we've missed, especially in today's age where the concept of racism has allowed our species to distinguish itself based on shade. It's a sibling rivalry gone wrong. Ammon, Moab, they're descended from Lot. They're literally Israel's cousins. They're descended from Abraham's nephew. How many of the nations are descended from Ham? Egypt, Cush. How many from Japheth? I firmly believe to be most of the Asian nations myself, but mostly because there's a lot of really interesting story and language changes there. If not them, then definitely Noah, because even the stories alone, there's something to dig into. How many related to Shem? And considering the fact that Ham, Shem, and Japheth are all Noah's kids, the entire story is pointing out that we are one species. We are one tiny little dot in the infinite cosmos that is deeply cared for and chosen by God. But we don't understand that beautiful calling. Not of mastery, but of stewardship. Not of abuse, but of uplift. Not of rule, but of empowerment. To make the garden grow brighter, to build up the next generation, to see something beautiful grow. That's the invitation. And it saddens me that we're still trying to learn that lesson. I'll just say what I've been saying for years since this entire silliness started. As a gamer, you're not a different race. Orc, that's a different race. Elf, that's a different race. You're a different shade. You're a different culture. You are not a different people. We are not a different species than each other. When we use clan or tan or flag or pride, let ourselves forget that. We step right into the shoes of Cain. Yep, Abel was chosen for this. Yep, and I hate him for it, so I'm going to kill him. But that's what we do. So out of one side of our mouth, we speak praises of the Lord, and out the other side, we curse his creation. Day in and day out. Instead of saying, hey, I get wanting to throw the rock. I've been there. But after you throw the rock, then what happens? You brain them, they drop dead. Cool. You now have the guilt of death on your hands. And I'm not just talking like the religious crap side of things. I mean, trust me, it will eventually eat at your soul. Either by consuming it entirely, leaving you uncaring of the fact that it has happened, or it will gnaw away at you, see crime and punishment, until you cannot but yell out the beating of that hideous heart, see Telltale. Because there's just some things we're not meant to do, and abusing each other is one of them. We've made it an art form in our current day and culture, and it's something we need to stop. Because if we expect life, if we expect love, if we expect anything like joy to prosper and hope to be known, then we've got to be living it. and that starts believing that, yes, something better comes. His name is Jesus, and he sets all things right. We just got to let him. Because if we continue to worship ourselves, if we continue to be gods of our own life, he'll let us, and it will walk right into the gates of hell. Because that is what hell is. It's a place of our own making, where we've decided our baggage, our darkness, and our pain are more important than freedom for ourselves or for the others who have sinned against us. So remember the prayer. Forgive us as we forgive those who trespass against us. We're not forgiven them. We can't be forgiven. So we're all debtors who owe something to be paid. His blood or our own, which will be shed. Not trying to be gruesome or grim, just being honest with you. Guilt has to be paid with blood. Whose is it going to be? Justice must come from the victim for the victim too. Not just against the villain, but for the victim. Both sides. And all too often we forget justice and mercy are two sides of the same coin, not opposites. Just like loving God and loving others are two sides of the same coin. One cannot be without the other. How can that be? Because if somebody is truly repentant, truly understands what they've done wrong and wants to set it right, then mercy must be shown. And if there is no interest in forgiveness, if there is no feeling sorry for what they've done, if it's simply, yep, and I'll do it again, then justice must come, so that another is not wronged or harmed. Mercy for those who would seek it. Justice for those who would not. The choice is yours. May his favor be upon you. Know that you're loved.